Steve! The highly anticipated remaster of Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door is nearly upon us, and Nintendo recently invited us to take a private look at how it's coming along. They gave us a glimpse at a couple of the quality of life features they're implementing to streamline the gameplay experience compared to the GameCube original, and we even picked up on a few neat surprises that fans of the original game probably aren't expecting. Those fans of the original game include both of us, by the way. Some pacing and backtracking issues aside, there's a reason so many people hail this GameCube RPG as their favorite Paper Mario game, or even one of the best RPGs of all time. The Thousand-Year Door is a stone-cold classic, and Nintendo seemed to be well on their way to making this excellent game even better.
The Thousand-Year Door isn't just a beat-for-beat remaster. Instead, as Nintendo seems keen to do this generation, they've added a number of improvements to streamline the gameplay experience. My favorite of the ones we saw was the partner ring. In the GameCube original, you had to go to the pause menu or swap partners in the middle of battle. On the Switch version, all you need to do is hold down L to bring up a ring and select your partner. It's kind of like Animal Crossing's Tool Ring. It may not sound like much, but it saves so much time. And if you need a little help, there are several new features that serve that purpose. At any time while you're playing, regardless of your active partner, hitting the ZL button will bring up a dialogue with Goombella to remind you what you need to do to advance the story. If you're stuck on a side quest, a brand new NPC in Rogueport's travel center named Ian Fumis will give you some helpful hints. And finally, another new NPC, this time a toad who has mastered martial arts and is dubbed the Battle Master, will help you practice timing for Mario and his companions' attacks, as well as the tricky timing for a super guard.
In the wake of the recent Super Mario RPG remake's new splash damage making an already easy game even easier, we also thought it would be a good idea to ask if the difficulty for this remaster would be changing at all. Nintendo's answer? No, mostly. The difficulty itself is the same as the original, but the new NPCs Steve mentioned, like the Battle Master and Ian Fumis, can provide some optional streamlining for those who want to make use of them.
Taking into account what Ash just told you, it did seem to me as though timing for certain moves was relaxed. When I played the Thousand-Year Door on GameCube, I noticed the input timing was fairly precise, whereas in the gameplay demo we watched, things seemed a bit more forgiving. That could just be because we weren't the ones holding the controller, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of the perfect input windows were a bit easier to nail. The Nintendo reps that ran our demo did make sure to tell us that a super guard still required very precise timing, leading me to believe the difficulty of at least that particular move hasn't changed. Nintendo was a bit more evasive about other things. I couldn't get a clear answer on whether or not the timings for regular moves were altered, but more interestingly, when asked about the Thousand-Year Door's infamous backtracking, we were told that a mechanic meant to ease the pain of backtracking is in the remaster, though our Treehouse rep declined to comment further. I wonder what it could be.
Same here. I think all that backtracking, especially later in the game, could rightly be called the Thousand-Year Door's biggest blemish on a game that has exceptionally few others of note. Switching gears for now though, it's time to talk about the soundtrack. If you know me, you know I'm kind of obsessed with video game music, and true to form, my ever-attentive ears picked up on something right away regarding this remaster's soundtrack. During a part of our demo showing off a portion of the early game Boggly Woods area, our Treehouse rep initiated a fight to show off some combat mechanics, and I immediately noticed something big. The battle theme that played was not the same one we hear in the Thousand-Year Door Remaster's reveal trailer. That is, the one that so closely matches the pitch and cadence of the original game's battle theme despite using different instrumentation. No, it's a totally new take on the battle theme with a higher pitch and completely different stylization. This leads me to believe that each of the game's chapters will now feature its own variation of the standard battle theme and possibly other recurring themes to mix things up a bit and give each of the game's major areas more of their own distinctive flavor. If true, you could say this remaster is taking a very welcome page from the Origami King. Now, I did ask about this in a follow-up question and was told merely that, and I quote, "The soundtrack has been updated, so as for the extent to which my theory is correct, Nintendo's not telling just yet." Potentially exciting additions to the remastered soundtrack aside though, what if you're just not into the more live orchestrated, big band approach taken here overall and would prefer to play with the original game's more electronic synth-heavy music? Well, much like the recent remake of Super Mario RPG, you can do that. It's not an option screen toggle this time, but for those of you who want that sweet GameCube original soundtrack pumped into your earholes, Nintendo has you covered with the brand new Nostalgic Tunes badge. It wasn't made clear to us when, where, or how you get this badge, but one would assume for utility purposes that it's likely to be earlier in the game rather than later. Most importantly though, the Nostalgic Tunes badge costs a whopping total of 0 badge points to use, so you can equip it whenever you want regardless of how you choose to spec out Mario's badge abilities and perks. Far more interesting than an option screen toggle, it's a very clever way to tie the option of playing with the OG soundtrack to a central gameplay mechanic. That's enough about the music for now though. Take it away, Steve.
If there's one thing I love about remakes and remasters, it's the inclusion of extras. Nintendo tends to keep pieces of their history like these under lock and key, so it was a huge surprise to me that the Thousand Year Door now includes both art and sound galleries for each chapter. To unlock them, you have to find all the star pieces and shine sprites in the chapter, which will then grant you access. Unfortunately, and for some pretty obvious reasons in my opinion, we didn't really get to see these. The inclusion of these galleries is sure to make me want to 100% the game when I get my hands on it, but there's a possibility something even bigger may be waiting for us when we get to play it ourselves.
Right, though I do want to emphasize the word possibility. We did, of course, ask if we could expect something along the lines of new post-game content for this remaster, kind of like what we got with the Super Mario RPG remake last year, knowing full well our Treehouse rep would probably plead the fifth on this particular subject. And, well, that's exactly what they did, basically telling us, you'll just have to wait and see. Now, personally, I got the sense that there may indeed be something planned on this front, but that's just my own interpretation and absolutely not a guarantee of anything. We do have one more potentially fascinating bit for you, though.
Near the end of our presentation, we noticed something very interesting. During the battle against Hooktail, there was a subtle but impactful difference between the Switch version and the GameCube original. Instead of crickets, Hooktail's weakness was frogs. If you're familiar with the Japanese version of the game, you'll know that this means the Switch version matches that one. I'm not sure why Nintendo opted to change this in international versions of the Thousand Year Door, especially considering a GameCube demo for the original version included Hooktail's original weakness to amphibians, but this could point to a more accurate translation that could introduce some significant changes to the way certain characters are presented. None of us ever really doubted that the Thousand Year Door was going to be one of Nintendo's most anticipated releases this year, but after getting a brief sampling of the new upgraded version, I'm feeling even more optimistic about its return. So far, Nintendo seems to have done everything right, from the music to the upgraded visuals to the quality of life changes that bring the GameCube Classic into the modern era. I still have tons of questions, even after spending some time with the game. Will there be any new post-game content? Has the overall difficulty changed from the 2004 original? And will a new audience find the same joy in the Thousand Year Door that so many of us did over the course of the last 20 years? We'll find answers to those questions when the game launches next month, but right now, all I can think about is my return to Rogueport. Hey, thanks for watching through to the end. If you want to hear more about our favorite turn-based Mario adventures, you can check out this video right here in the end card, and I've let the algorithm select a random one for you here. And if you want to support us, head over to patreon.com/gvgaming to find out how.